I learned to be gentle and humble, to refrain from all anger and passion, from the fame and memory of him who begot me. I learned both modesty and human conduct. From my mother, I learned to be religious and generous, to abstain not only from doing, but even from wanting evil, to be content with frugal food, and to shun all the excesses that come from great wealth. From my great-grandfather, not attending their public schools and auditoriums, finding me good and competent teachers at home, and that I should not think too much whether, on such occasions, I should pay excessive fees did from the one who raised me, not to attach myself affectionately to one of the two large factions of circus riders, called Prasini and Vinity, neither to favor partially in the amphitheater one of the gladiators or fencers, like the talkers or setters. Moreover, to endure work, not to need many things when I have something to do it myself rather than commit to many affairs, and not easily to admit any slander of diagnosis, not to occupy myself with vain things, and not easily to believe the things which are commonly said by those who claim to work miracles, and sorcerers, agitating prestiges and impostors concerning the power of charms, and their elimination of demons or evil spirits, and other things similar. Not to raise quail for game, nor to be crazy about such a thing, not to be offended by the freedom of speech of others, and to apply myself to philosophy that I must also thank him for always hearing me first Bacchus, then Tyndareus and Martianes, and to have written dialogues in my youth, and to have acquired a taste for the little bed and to the skins of philosophers, and to all those other things which, according to Greek discipline, are specific to those who profess philosophy. In Rusticus, I see that I first imagined that my life needed some rectifications and some cures, and that I did not fall into the ambition of ordinary sophists, namely to write writings on common theorems, or to exhort men to virtue in the study of philosophy through publications, and that I have never succeeded, through ostentation, in showing myself to be active and capable of any kind of bodily exercise, and that I have abandoned the study of rhetoric, poetry, and elegant and careful language, that I wasn't used to walking around the house in a long dress, nor do any of these things. Moreover, I learned from him to write letters without any affectation or curiosity, like the one he wrote to my mother from Cynicia, and to be easy and ready to be reconciled, and to rejoice again with those who had offended me, as soon as one of them wanted to look for me. To read diligently, not to be satisfied with light and superficial knowledge, nor to advance quickly to the things which are commonly spoken of. I must also thank him for always finding in Epictetus his Hyponamata, or moral comments and common affections, which he also gave me of his, and for always being the same man, whether in the most acute pain, or after the loss of a child, or in long illnesses, which was also for me a present and visible example that it was possible for a same man to be both vehement and careless, the man who was not subject to being upset and offended by the inability of his students and his hearers in his lectures, and a true model of a man who, of all his gifts and faculties, valued less in himself than his excellent ability to teach and persuade others of the common theorems and maxims of Stoic philosophy. From him also I learned to receive favors and kindnesses, as they are generally attributed to friends, so as not to offend idiots, nor to attack inopportunely those who are carried away by vulgar opinions, theorems, and principles of philosophers. His conversation was an example of how a man could accommodate himself to all men and all company, so that although his company was more sweet and more pleasant than that of all flatterers, it was at the same time very respected and revered, who also had an appropriate happiness and faculty, rationally and methodically, of discovering and putting in order all the determinations and instructions necessary for a man's life, of Alexander the Grimmarian. Be blameless myself, and not reproachfully reprimand anyone for barbarity, solicitism, or false pronunciation, but skillfully, by way of response, testimony, hypocrisy. The state of a tyrannical king is subject, and how those who are commonly called the birthless are in any frequent or necessary to say or write to someone in a letter I am not at leisure, nor in this way, to postpone until later the duties that we owe to our friends and acquaintances towards each according to his species, under the pretext of urgent matters, catalysts, not to condemn the denunciations of a friend, even unjust ones, but to strive to bring him back to his former dispositions. To speak freely and warmly of the good of all my masters on all occasions, as is reported from Domitius and Athenodotus, and to love my children with true affection on the part of my brother Sus, to be good and affectionate towards all those of my house and of my family, through whom I also met Thoria, to observe a constant tenor, not interrupted by other cares and distractions, in the study and esteem of philosophy. Be generous and liberal to the greatest extent, always hope for the best, and trust that my friends love me that I in him. I also noticed that he openly treated those he reprimanded at all times, and that his friends could, without doubt or much observation, know what he wanted or did not want. It was so open and clear on the part of Claudius Maximus. It is force in everything to dominate me, and in no way let myself be carried away. To be cheerful and courageous in all hazards and sudden accidents, as in diseases, love gentleness, moderation, and gravity, and do my business, whatever it may be, completely and without quarrels. Everything he said, everyone believed him, that he thought as he spoke, and that all that he did it with good intention. His way was to never be surprised at anything, never to be in a hurry, and yet never slow, perplexed, discouraged, nor at any time laugh inappropriately or excessively, nor become angry or indulgent, distrustful, but always ready to do good, to forgive, and to speak the truth, and all this, as one who seemed rather to have been upright and just than having ever been rectified or straightened. And there was not a man who ever thought himself underestimated by him, or who could find it in his heart to believe himself better than him. He was also very pleasant and gracious, that I noticed his gentleness in my father, his unfailing constancy in the things he had determined after examination and appropriate deliberation. He behaved without any vanity in matters of honor and dignity, as they are valued. His hard work and diligence, his availability to listen to any man who had something to say tending to the common good, he generally and impartially granted to each his due. His skill and his knowledge, when the rule or the extreme, or when negligence or moderation were in order, he refrained from any unpursued love for the young. A man not absolutely requiring his friends to serve him at his ordinary meals, nor necessarily to accompany him on his travels, and that whenever a matter had to be postponed or omitted before it could be finished, he was always, when he returned to it, the same man as before. His careful examination of things during consultations, and his patient listening to others. He did not hastily abandon the search for the subject, as one who is easily content with sudden notions and apprehensions. His concern to preserve his friends. How at no time did he behave towards them with negligence disdainful, and never tired of them, nor did he love them madly. His mind satisfied in all things, his joyful face, his concern to foresee things from afar and to take things into order, even without noise or clamor, plus how he suppressed all the cheers and the flatteries, how he carefully observed all that was necessary for government, and took into account the common expenses, and with what patience he observed all that was necessary for government. He was criticized for his strict and rigid ways of acting. He was neither a superstitious worshiper of the gods, nor an ambitious man who sought to please men, nor a careful observer of popular applause. But he was sober in all things, and observed everywhere what was proper. He was not interested in new things, but in the things which contributed to his well-being and convenience, as his fortune did to him allowed in abundance, without pride or braggadocio, but with all liberty and freedom, so that he enjoyed it freely without any worry or affectation when he was present. Likewise, when he was absent, he did not lack any of them. Moreover, no one ever praised him as an educated, insightful, obsequious man or a good speaker, but like a mature man, a perfectly healthy man, who could not tolerate being flattered, capable of governing himself and others. Moreover, he honored all true philosophers without elevating those who were not. His sociability, his graceful and pleasant conversation, but never to the point of perfection, attracted people. He took care of his body in limits and measures, not as someone who wanted to live a long life, or who was too concerned with cleanliness and elegance, but also not as someone who did not lend it care so that, by his own care and providence, he rarely needed interior medicine or exterior applications, but above all, with what ingenuity he yielded to anyone who had acquired a particular faculty, such as eloquence, knowledge of the laws, ancient customs, or others, and how he competed with them in his best care and his best efforts, so that each of them can, in his own way, be considered and esteemed. And although he did all things carefully according to the ancient customs of his ancestors, he did not want men to notice that he was imitating ancient customs. Again, how he was not easily moved and tossed about, but loved to be consistent in the same places and the same affairs, and how, after his great outbursts of witticisms, he returned fresh and vigorous to his affairs. Once again, its secrets, he didn't have many or often, and only those that concerned public affairs. No builder, ever curious or concerned, neither about his food, nor the quality of his work, nor the color of his clothes, nor anything there belonged to external beauty, never doing anything with such ardor and such intention that one could say of him that he sweated, but on the contrary, all things distinctly, as if at leisure, without disturbance, with order, healthfully and pleasantly. We could have applied to him what is reported from Socrates, able and temperate in the enjoyment of their good, but to hold firm and constant, and to remain within the limits of true moderation and sobriety in both states, is the characteristic of a man who has a perfect and invincible soul, as he showed in the illness of Maximus. I have received from the gods that I had good forefathers and good parents, a good sister, good masters, good servants, loving parents, almost all that I have, and that I have never transgressed any occasion which had presented itself, might very well have been committed by me, but that the mercy of the gods prevented such a combination of things and occasion as might have caused me to incur this blame. That I was not raised for long by my father's concubine, that I retained the flower of my youth, that I did not take it upon myself to be a man before my time, but rather put it off longer than was necessary, that I lived under the domination of my father's concubine, the government of my lord and father, who wanted to take away all pride and all vainglory, and reduce myself to this vanity and this opinion. That it was not impossible to a prince to live at court without a troop of guards and supporters, without clothes extraordinary, without this or that torch, without statues and other details of pageantry and magnificence, but that a man can reduce himself, and almost reduce himself to the state of a private man. Those who raised me to the places and dignities that seemed to me the most desired, and I didn't push them away with the hope and expectation that, since he was still young, I would do the same later, that I have always known Apollonius, Rusticus, and Maximus, that I have often and effectively had the opportunity to consider and meditate within myself on this life, which is according to nature, that it is its nature and its manner. So that, as to the gods and the suggestions, aids and inspirations which could be expected from them, nothing but myself, in not observing these inner movements and suggestions. Yes, And the almost clear and apparent instructions and warnings of the gods were the only cause that my body in such a life was able to hold out so long. That I never had anything to do with Benedict and her disciples, Theodotus. Yes, and later, when I fell into fits of love, I was quickly cured. That having often been displeased with Rusticus, I never did anything to him, for which I afterwards had occasion to repent, for my mother was to die young, but she lived with me all these last years. That, whenever I had the intention of helping and feeding someone who was poor or who fell into some immediate need, my officers never told me that there was not enough money to do it, and that I myself never had the opportunity to demand the same thing from anyone, that I have a wife so obedient, so loving, so ingenuous, that I had the choice of fit and capable men to whom I could entrust the education of my children, that I received help through dreams that I asked for other things, in particular, how I could stop my bleeding and cure my vertigo, like the one that happened to you at Quito, like a seizure when he was praying by the sea. And when I first applied myself to philosophy, I didn't do that. I have not fallen into the hands of a few sophists, nor spent my time reading the numerous volumes of ordinary philosophers, nor to practice resolving arguments and sophisms, nor to dwell on the study of meteors and other natural curiosities. All these things could not have been done without the help of the gods and fortune. I in the land of the Catagranos these days. In the morning, tell yourself. Today, I will have to deal with a curious idler, an ungrateful person, a scoffer, a cunning liar, or an envious person, an unsociable and uncharitable man. All these iniquities have happened to them out of ignorance of what is truly good and truly evil. But I, who understand the nature of what is good, only what is desirable, and of what is evil, only what is truly odious and shameful, who know further that this transgressor, whoever he may be, is my kinsman, not by the same blood and the same seed, but by participation of the same reason and the same charity. How can I be hurt by any of them, since it is not in their power to make me understand anything truly reproachful, angry, or malicious towards one who, by nature, is so close to me? For we are all born to be fellow workers, like feet and hands and eyelids, like upper and lower rows of teeth. For such people, being in opposition is therefore unnatural. And what is anger and aversion but opposition? All that I am is either flesh or life, or what we commonly call the mistress and dominant part of man. Don't let your mind be distracted and wander here and there, because it won't be, but he's already ready to die. Think little of your flesh, your blood, your bones, and your skin, a lovely piece of knitted and twisted work, made up of nerves, veins, and arteries. Don't think about it more than that. And as for your life, consider what it is, a wind, not a constant wind, but all winds. For a moment of an hour, let yourself go and come back. The third is your ruling part. And here, consider yourself an old and do not allow this excellent part to be submissive and become a slave. Do not allow it to be dragged up and down by unreasonable and unsociable desires and movements, as by wires and nerves. Let her no longer complain about anything now present, nor fear and flee from anything to come, which destiny has assigned to you. Whatever proceeds immediately from the gods, which any man will grant, depends totally on their divine providence. They ask for those things which are commonly said to happen by fortune. They must be conceived as dependent on nature, or this connection and this sequence first and general of all those things which, more apparently, are administered and carried out by divine providence. May these things be enough for you. May they always be with you. As your general rules and precepts, they ask for your thirst for books. Stop it as quickly as possible, so that you do not die murmuring and complaining, but truly meek and well satisfied, and with all your heart grateful to the gods.